Welcome to a special edition of The Sheet. I'm Jeff Marek. Now, Scotty Bowman once said of Wendel Clarke, if you let him skate, he's going to hurt you. To which I would add, if you let him shoot, he's going to hurt you. If you let him drop his gloves, he's going to hurt you. If you let him on the ice, he's going to hurt you. Wendel was not the biggest player on the ice, but pound for pound, he may have been the toughest. And add in one of the most lethal wrist shots the game has ever seen, and you have a recipe for creating a legend in Toronto. Wendel Clarke joined us for one of our Del Manor events recently, and as you're about to find out, when he gets rolling with stories from the glory years, he's like a freight train coming down the wing. Don't get in the way, just let him roll. Here's Wendel Clarke on a holiday edition of The Sheet.
Oh, this is great. First of all, Wendel, before we talk about you, which is one of our favorite things to talk about, I love that Wendel Clarke jersey, by the way, the old school 1917. Have a look at you. Look at that, hey? Number 17 never looked so good. Where's Bruce and Scott? Before we talk about Wendel Clarke, I want to talk about one of my favorite hockey players, Robert Thomas. Robert Thomas is a first-line center for the St. Louis Blues. Robert Thomas played minor hockey here. He played minor hockey with Wendel Clarke's son, Cody. He's a Stanley Cup champion as well with the St. Louis Blues. He's a Memorial Cup champion with the London Knights. And right over there in the St. Louis Blues outfit is his grandfather, and beside him is his father, Scott. For a round of applause for some Stanley Cup royalty in the house tonight.
That's probably Scott that told you to put the cup there so he'd rub it in my face, didn't he? Hey?
Where's the Memorial Cup and everything else that Robert's accumulated over the years? Quick thought on Robert, because your son Cody played with Robert growing up a little bit.
Yeah, no, I was same age group. I lived on the wrong side of the line, so it wasn't York Simcoe. I went to the city with my son and played, but I was very fortunate to coach the kids in the summer hockey when we got to stack a team and put just enough kids on and have some fun. We basically understacked a team so that everybody got lots of ice time.
Yep.
And you had no arguments. And it was just, and it was fun. All the kids got along great, and the parents got along good. So we had some fun in the summer.
I was going to say understaffing the team always means everybody gets ice.
You have to play everybody.
And you know who doesn't complain? The parents.
No, if you lose because you're tired, it's perfect. But that's usually it. Coaches don't have to make a decision. You just next up goes.
Yeah. What was Robert like? By the way, my producer is around, Zach Phillips, who played with. Where is he behind me? Who also played with Robert growing up, playing minor hockey as well. What kind of player was Robert?
Well, much like you see in the NHL, very patient and cool with a puck, very sturdy. Set of legs, could draw people over and then feed it. He loved passing more than shooting. I think he would stick handle it till somebody finally caught up to him, and then he'd pass it to him, say, put it in the net. That was Robert, but very, just fed the puck, made everybody on the line better. That was his biggest asset. He really did. No matter what team he played on, you watch him in St. Louis now, does the same stuff.
He's outstanding. Does that jibe with what you gentlemen observed from Robert? Pretty much? He's one of my favorite hockey players. I know I'm biased. I've watched him for a long time. Tremendous athlete. And fingers crossed, we'll see him representing Canada at the Olympics in Italy as well. What is this time of year, Wendel, before we get into all the hockey? Give us a sort of wrap, even going back to Kelvington, Saskatchewan. This time of year, leading into December, Christmas on the horizon, what does Wendel Clarke remember of the early days?
Well, if you go way back to the early days, and you guys remember this, we had no artificial ice. So I still wasn't skating in an indoor rink yet because we had regular natural ice. So the ice didn't come in the rink till just before Christmas. So we'd be skating outside in the ponds or something first. That was our early until I started going to the city to play. And then when I was 14, we got artificial ice. 13, 14, Kelvington finally got artificial ice. But that was it. This time of year, harvest finally comes. So we get snow every year in Saskatchewan where I grew up. Halloween, you were always jumping snowbanks with your costumes on. I can remember that as kids. That was you always knew that was snow on October 31st, and you had it until just before June at home.
What are your earliest memories of putting on skates?
My mom hated it because our kitchen had linoleum. So my dad, he played lots of hockey. So he would have us put the skates on at a year when we could walk. So whenever I could walk, we got skates. So I was walking in skates at a year and a half, 2 years old on mom's linoleum in the kitchen. Not a very happy mom, I'll tell you that. And so because it mimicked, like walking on here, it mimicked ice.
Of course, yeah.
And so he had us walking on that. And then my dad's version of teaching us how to skate was he'd put you at center ice during public skating and leave you there. And you would cry and crawl to the boards. He'd pick you up and put you back at center ice again until you learned how to skate. Then you skated, never cried anymore. That was a school of tough knocks from my dad's end. Right in the middle of public skating, he'd keep you, and sooner or later, because you'd want to hang out with all the other boys and girls that were on the ice, you learned how to skate and be a part of it.
I heard a story once that your dad, one of the reasons why your wrist shot was so vicious and violent, like the best in the NHL at your time, is it true that your dad never let you take slap shots? There was always wrist shots. Is that true?
Yes. I never played, maybe you guys don't know, but I never played forward until I got drafted to the Toronto Maple Leafs. So at 18, 19, I turned into a forward. But before that, I was a defenseman, and my dad was defense, and he'd go to the city and buy half dozen sticks at a time for his kids, and then he would heat them up on the oven or the blowtorch and straighten them all dead straight because he didn't like curved sticks, because when he grew up, there was no such a thing as a curve. So all the sticks were straight, and then he said, no slapping the puck, period. And so in order to score, and when I played minor hockey, I wasn't allowed to score more than 3 goals in a game, and if I did, I had to shoot it from the blue line. So I'd skate to the blue line and then just shoot, because the goalies only come halfway up to the crossbar then. And so, 5 or 6, if you could shoot, you could just shoot over the goalie's head. So I basically got the wrist shot from never allowing ice. So I never even really took one until the newer technology came along. Right. Just learning to snap the puck.
So when did you first start to, what was the experience of using a curved stick for the first time like then? Because if you're growing up with like the Dave Keon
Sidney
heel Crosby
to toe,
straight blade.
And today when I started teaching the kids, it was hard, because in the old days you had to learn how to shoot a puck with technique if you wanted a hard shot, because we had no technology. You couldn't bend that big wooden stick when you're a little guy. You could barely wrap your hands around it. Yeah. So you had to have technique, shift your weight from back to front, and go heel to toe with a wrist shot. And once technology came, we changed how we taught kids to shoot the puck, because as long as you could get the stick to bend, the puck would fly off the stick when you watch these guys today. So then it was just about, didn't matter if it was coming off the toe or the heel, as long as you get the stick to bend, the puck would move. And so today, everybody can shoot a puck hard, but there's still only 2 guys in every team that knows where it's going. That's the only thing that's changed. In the old days, we could only have a few guys that could shoot hard, but there's only 2 that knew where it was going. Well, today's the same. All those guys can shoot the puck really hard, but there's only a couple of them that actually know where it's going. But the stick and technology for kids now is a huge help.
There's a player who plays in the OHL right now with the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. His name is Brady Martin, and he got to hockey late, was just casual, just like to have fun with his buddies. Ended up playing AAA with Waterloo. I think he went to the OHL Cup semifinal a few years ago. Anyhow, he just got drafted by the Nashville Predators. And going into junior hockey, he had never done a traditional workout. He was just farm boy strong. And Matt Nickel, who's a legendary strength and conditioning coach in Toronto, finally got him in the gym, and he's like, this kid is incredible. Like, there's all these other kids who have been, lifting and in the gym, and he's dusting them, just blowing them away with like old school farm boy strength, great grip strength. Nashville's got a really good one in Brady Martin. When I say farm boy strong, what does that mean to Wendel Clarke?
Well, that's probably a good angle when we used, or if I played against physical hockey players at the NHL level, we'd say that's farm guy strong. That's not, we were never scared of a guy that was really strong because of barbells and weights, because that's what he could do. He could bench press you. But a guy that was farm strong would have been the Hunter brothers growing up. When you played against them, you could feel it. Brad McCrimmon was probably one of the stronger guys that you just felt it when they went like that. Okay, he's strong.
Yeah.
And nothing to do with his size, but just His straight. And then I watched and when I made the Leafs and then met all the 67 guys that played on the team, the older fellas, and you'd shake their hand, they'd grab it, and it was just, they were just strong. As farm guy strong. It had nothing to do with the size of a guy, but just straight strength.
At what point did you realize that this was more than just a hobby? That this was more than just having fun with my buddies at the outdoor rink, and you had a real shot at it?
I think you just kept graduating to the next level. You never, for me growing up in Kelvington, Saskatchewan, we only seen hockey 6 o'clock Saturday night, which was 8 o'clock here. And here you got Wednesday and Saturday, twice a week watching. We're back home. You got, in the 60s, they showed the Leafs games. In the 70s, they showed Montreal across Canada because they showed whichever team was getting to the Cups, that's who they showed usually on the national game. And so we at 6 o'clock on a Saturday, us kids were all at the rink playing shinny or somebody watching somebody play, and your parents are at home watching. And so the NHL seemed way too good. There's not a chance that you'll ever be as good as those guys on TV. But you looked up, because of the small town, you looked up to the senior team in town. So on Thursday nights was the senior hockey home night. So that's, you'd go and watch the guys play senior hockey, which is usually an array of midget kids through 45-year-olds playing senior hockey, and you thought that was some of the best hockey. And then when some kids a little older than me would play, my older brother played junior, and the great thing out there is everything's on the radio, so you'd listen to the Tier 2 games, Yorkton Terriers, Humboldt Broncos, Prince Albert Raiders were Tier 2 then. Wow. Then you'd listen to the Saskatoon Blades and the Regina Pats. That was always on the radio. So you'd listen to those guys and recognize some names from the neighborhood or from the area that may be playing. And my first hockey school I went to was in Yorkton, the Dennis Plonich Hockey School. And the instructors were Dennis Plonich, Mike Plonich, Bernie Federko, and Ken Federko.
Oh, wow.
Brian Prop. So those are my first instructors. So then I got to play against them in the NHL. And at my first hockey school, I was banned. I wasn't allowed to shoot on the kids unless I played in the older group.
And how old were you at that time?
12. I was not allowed to shoot, so they moved me to the older kids and said, okay, now you can shoot on the goalies.
Yeah. Were you always like a tougher hockey player? Always
yeah,
like the physical side of it?
Yeah, that's my handicap now is why you're sore, is because I played physical and had fun doing it. I never fought, though, ever until junior.
Really?
But, no, because my dad
Western League was your first time going for it?
First time fighting would have been not till junior, because my dad would have beat me up if I'd have fought before that, because he didn't believe. He says, why are you getting in a fight in minor hockey? There's no even rules for it. Yeah. So that's when I coached, and you get in Toronto in the Don Cherry area, everybody wanted kids. Oh, my kid's going to be a tough guy. He should fight. Well, no, he's 12. He's got to learn how to play hockey. Yeah. And you could see it changing, and you'd be trying to tell the parents, hockey's not the way it was. Yeah. And so... no, but physical play was always a part of. So I was always a power forward or a power defenseman, I guess, growing up.
I want to get to a couple of your rougher and tougher moments in the NHL, but before that, I want to talk about the World Juniors, because that's on the horizon, and it's always a big time in Canada. Always expected to win gold, and I remember Sherry Basson telling me a story about you. And as you mentioned, you're a defenseman, and there were no more forward spots available on Team Canada, the World Juniors. This must have been 84. 85. There was no spot on the World Junior team for a forward. But as I was told by Sherry, he said, no spots on the blue line. Sorry. Wendel, we have a spot up front, but you got to do two things. You got to play forward, and you got to cut your hair. Because you had the big, long... No, I know. But before then, you had that long hair.
The hockey hair, yeah, out the back, yeah.
Yeah, you had that great. So do you remember that conversation?
Yeah, no,
you can play if you're a forward and you cut your hair.
Yeah, well, you can remember, because I think it was a year after that, did TSN not pick up
the World Juniors?
The World Juniors, I think in 86 or 87, they started covering it.
I think it was after 87, because there was that big brawl in Piestany. Okay. And it was a year after the TSN picked it up.
And you remember at 7 a.m, they'd always show kids getting cut on TV. Yeah. And I used to think, how archaic is that? Because all those kids that get cut from Team Canada, that's the first time they've ever been cut in their life. And TSN showing it nationally on TV at 7 a.m.
I was going to say, the way they used to do it, I look back on it now, and Wendel, like at the time, I never thought anything of it, but I look back now, well, certainly as a parent, I look back on it and I cringe. What they used to do is, it was like 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning?
Yeah.
7 in the morning, and the cameras would be there. And if you're a player and you got a knock on your hotel room door, that meant pack up and go home. And the cameras would be there. It was tears, and they're 17 years, tears in the kids' eyes. They're walking down the hallway to the elevator. Like, oh, how cold is this?
Yeah. So I got that call. So I thinking I'm getting cut. So I go to the coach's room, meet Sherry Basson and Terry Simpson, and they basically said, in order to make the team, would you play forward? Because we want to take extra defensemen on top of, and so John Marner from the Regina Pats and myself both made the team as forwards or defensemen because they wanted to take extra because World Juniors was in Finland. So in case somebody got hurt, that was our extra guys. And he knew we were both physical, offensive players on defense. And we'd play, Bob Basson would have been the center on the fourth line. So he says, I'll just create a fourth line that can skate and hit, is what their idea was, a kind of real Canadian hockey. And Dave Gertz broke his leg in the first exhibition game. So then we were down a defenseman. So in World Juniors was the first time I'd ever played defense in my life. I played 3 games at defense, every time I played forward, and I played 3 games at forward. So the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Was it on the wing? Was it on the wing?
On the wing,
On
yeah.
the wing.
On the wing. I played 3 games. They'd put me with different guys, or during the game, they'd switch it up because the game that we tied our last game against the Czechs, Dominic Hasek in net, we had to tie the game to win the gold medal. Right. And we were losing 2-1. I'd played defense the whole game. I got moved to forward for a shift in the third, and we scored. And so the Leafs must have only scouted me for 3 games. Because I only played 3 games forward the whole time. But and the World Juniors is your biggest thing that's the first time as kids, because usually you're pretty good all the way up. The kids, they know they're going to make the team. Every team they try out. But when you try out for Team Canada, there's a lot of good hockey players. So you have no idea if you're going to make it. That's the first real pressure for pretty much all these kids, whether they make it or not. And the year I made it, and we didn't know this because there wasn't coverage like today, and to get back to the forward thing, Todd Gill got cut, Joe Nieuwendyk got cut, Gary Roberts got cut, and Patrick Waugh got cut. All off that World Junior team, they all got cut because Roberts made it the next year. Yep. And I was telling the story how I was doing a thing for the World Juniors, and basically you're talking to the kids and saying you got to do anything wherever the coach tells you to play, you do it, and it's a one-time thing for a month. And explaining my situation, I was a defenseman my whole life. I accepted playing forward, and Gary Roberts kept looking at me. And he goes, "You mean to tell me I got cut because they moved the defenseman to forward?" He wasn't as happy with my story as I was telling it, but that was the whole premise. And then Gerry McNamara, who was the general manager for the Blades or the Leafs at the time, said, and I didn't know this till 3 months before Gerry passed away here. I had a coffee with him, and he says, "No, you were playing forward from the time I scouted you. My scouts didn't even know. I didn't tell them that you were going to be a forward, doesn't matter what they scouted. I had you at forward."
Can we pause a little bit here and have a conversation about Gerry McNamara, because he was one of my favorite people to talk to. I miss him dearly. We were making plans to have lunch like a month before he passed away. Just a wonderful man. And Gerry McNamara, before he was the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs, was also a scout. And I consider Boria Salming to be one of the best players to ever play in the NHL. Full stop, period, last call, over. He was a phenomenal athlete, a great defenseman, someone that endured, punches and slashes and cross checks and all of it, and never changed his game. And Gerry was the guy that discovered him in Sweden, a lone scout, going to an obscure arena and finds Boria Salming and Inge Hammerstrom and brings them back. To me, he's one of the most important people in the history of the Toronto Maple Leafs. What did he mean to you?
Yeah, no, I was going to play, it didn't matter. As long as I wasn't going back to play junior, I didn't care what position I was playing. You're 18 years old, you're just happy to be in the NHL. But Gerry had put together, as I tell people, I was fortunate enough in the 90s, got Dougie Gilmore and Pat Burns as coach and Cliff Fletcher. We had a pretty good team to go to the semifinals. Our team in 85 through 87 actually had more talent than our 91 to 90. We never had a Doug Gilmour.
Yeah.
But everybody was a first pick, and everybody was a top 10 or better pick.
A lot of young defensemen.
Benning and Nyland. Gary Lehman was a defenseman, then they moved him to forward. Russ Courtnall, Aya Frady, Todd Gill, Kenny Reggett, Alan Bester. We just had nobody to put it together.
Yeah.
We had all this, and you had Boria Salming. And another thing about Boria, and I played with Steve Yzerman in Detroit, and to this day, Steve Yzerman considers Boria Salming the second best defenseman to ever play in the NHL behind Bob Orr.
Yeah.
That's what he thinks of him. And you think of it when Boria played here, had Boria played on the 4 cups with the Islanders, the 4 cups with Montreal, the 2 cups with Boston, think of him as a player getting to play with those type of lineups.
Yeah.
He played against those lineups. So Potvin got to play in a lineup like that. Bobby Orr got to play in a lineup like that. Robinson, Savard, and Lapointe got to play. Imagine Salming getting to play in a team that won 4 cups in a row. Like, he had to play against the Leafs, who almost got there and then dismantled. They were probably 2 players away, and dismantled the team that was that close.
And they didn't want to compete against the WHA, so they let Henderson go and Mahavlich go, and that young defense with like Ricky Lee and Jim Dory and like all those young guys, just let them all go.
Let them go, yeah.
And that could have been like the foundation. Sorry to make it depressing for Maple Leafs fans, but you probably should have won at least one.
Well, right
Stanley
when we're
Cup
not doing
in
so
the
well, we
70s.
want to bring up another era of not doing so well, right?
Okay, let's talk. Okay, hold
Hey.
on. Let's talk about 93 then, because that was such a magical season. And before we do the preamble for all of it, there's one moment that I will never, ever forget. It's burned into my brain. My sister was graduating from university at Bishop's, and on the way back, we stopped at Montreal to watch Game 6 of the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Los Angeles Kings. We're at a bar downtown. I don't think it's there anymore. It was near the Forum. It was called Cheers. And in the bar that day, it was me and my friend George. We're driving back to Toronto, and we're like, we can't miss Game 6. We're stopping. We're staying in Montreal the night, and we're watching. And in the bar was Patrick Waugh, Jacques Demers, a number of other Montreal Canadiens players cheering wildly for the Los Angeles Kings, knowing they wanted no part of that 93 team. And I can't tell you how many people have said there was no way that if it got to Toronto, Montreal in the Stanley Cup final, that Pat Burns and his team was going to lose to Montreal. Do you believe that?
We didn't lose a regular season game against them. Now, Patrick Waugh did set a record for overtime wins in that year, so he was being the Patrick Waugh. But we had so much confidence. I know we played so much hockey because we played 3 rounds to 7 games. So we played 21 games, I think, in 41 nights or something like that, and east-west travel. But if we'd have got the fortunate, if we didn't get Wayne Gretzky, what do you get? 9 points in the last 2 games?
That Game 7 was like the best game you ever played,
Yeah,
too. Like, you got to pick a night.
Yeah, no, like they would have shut Canada down for 2 weeks to watch the old original 6 teams go at it.
67 all over again.
That was, and they didn't want to play us. Kirk Muller said they were running up and down. They were happy in the hallways when they beat us, because people didn't realize how good LA was, because they were all young kids and we're always sleeping before the West Coast plays. So you don't really know all the young guys that they had that were pretty good. And so they were young and they weren't supposed to be there either. And so when they won that first game, I think LA won the first game, and then it was like a Stanley Cup for them to even beat us to get there. So then it wasn't the same game, and Montreal just took over Game 2 on after the called illegal stick. They just
On Marty
to the next level, Montreal, and Patrick was Patrick. Patrick did that to me when I was playing in Detroit, my second last year. We were up 2-0, 2 games to nothing on Colorado. Our goalie got hurt. So we had to put our backup in, and Patrick Waugh turned it on, and they beat us 4 games to 2. And it was that's how good Patrick was. Like, so I can't say for sure we'd have beat Montreal, because I seen it in Colorado when he woke up. That was nothing you can do about it. He's that good.
In that series you had with the Los Angeles Kings, one of the big flashpoint moments that all Maple Leafs fans who saw it live will always remember, and it'll live on in infamy, is your fight with Marty McSorley. So Doug Gilmour comes over the blue line. McSorley hits him with an elbow from the cellar. Like one of the most vicious elbows we've ever seen. And right away, you go to Marty. And I swear, Wendell, I don't know how he stood up because you hit him with, and I've watched all your fights, and the Ben Wilson one was a doozy. But I don't know that I've ever seen you throw 3 harder punches faster than when you hit McSorley to start that fight. Can you take us back to that game in '93?
I'll take it just before it. We were playing Detroit and getting set up. And in the Detroit series, they had another fellow, that Mr. Probert guy was playing in Detroit. And I was told by Pat Burns before the series starts, no matter what happens, you will never be fighting Probert. That was his, like he said. So remember the first 2 games.
You were under orders?
Under orders, you will not fight Probert. So I think we lost 7-2 and 8-3 in the first 2 games in Detroit. We lost badly, and I'd be looking back at Pat going, are you sure I can't do anything? And because that, when the teams get their game plans going, the coach has it. It's all set out for the series. And so we end up, smart play, we end up beating them out in 7 games. Yeah. But then when Dougie got hit, I remembered he didn't say I couldn't fight Marty. There was no rule on that one. And Marty was very smart doing for his team. And the reason why he didn't go down, Marty, farm boy tough. Like he is a tough, his whole family, tough customers. Is we were going to win that game. I think it was 5-1 or 5-2 at the time at the end of the game, near the end. And he was setting a tone for his team, more his team than us. And that he knew that would cause something. And it did, to let us know that this isn't over. That's what he was sending, a message for his guys and to us. And so I'm not being, us guys, we don't get smarter till our late 40s. Right? So when I think about it back in 2010, 10 years after I retired, why did I go after Marty? I should have just skated over to the bench and one-punched that Wayne Gretzky guy. Because he's the guy that got 9 points in his last 2 games that beat us. Marty hit our best player. I should have just imagined the heck that would have caused with the NHL if I skated over to the bench, grab number 99 right there, and because he's the guy that beat us. But Marty was doing his job, and to Marty's credit, he started out in the NHL as strictly a tough guy, couldn't play. And by the end, he earned himself to be able to play in every situation and turn himself into a player. So full kudos. But Marty McSorley was also my first 2 fights ever in the NHL. My first.
Is that when he was with Pittsburgh?
He was with Edmonton. I was a rookie. Okay. In Toronto. So in the old days,
way to pick your spots, Wendell.
Yeah. Well, my first fight. Think of it. How bad our organization was.
Tiptoe into the water instead of just diving into the deep end.
Day 2 of training camp. So I'm drafted. Think of this. Mosta Matthews gets drafted first overall. Day 2 of training camp, Jim Benning and I have the same agent. Jim Benning calls Donnie Meehan and says, tell Wendell to be heads up because Bob McGill's coming to fight him on Wednesday, day 3.
At training camp.
So the team tough guy is coming to test how tough I am. I'm trying out for the best player spot. I'm not trying out for team tough guy. So I got to fight the team tough guy day 3 of my first training camp in the NHL. And then training camp, so us players, and now we have computers and everything, but back then, the best thing we ever got, us players all liked, was the game notes in the morning of the games. So Marty would have went down the game notes and seen in junior that I had over 200 penalty minutes every year, so he said, well, let's just see. And my biggest problem was in the first fight I fought Marty, because I fought him lots after this. My first fight with Marty was against their bench in Edmonton, and by accident, the player door opened. So I fell in their bench on top of him in front of all his buddies. So that's like an automatic win, even though you didn't really throw much, but it was like I ended on top in front of all his. So then it was like the rest of the time that we ever played, he wanted to fight. And that was Marty doing his job and stuff. So that was the first. And then year 2, John Brophy at training camp was our coach.
Let me pause. John Brophy, by the way, wonderful guy, loved tough hockey. As a player, he was tough. As a coach, he was tough. He wanted you talk about 200 PIMs. He wanted his whole team, every guy, 200 PIMs. Yeah. That's what he wanted. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and so First day of training camp, my second year, Kevin McGuire is trying out for the team. So he sends Kevin McGuire to fight me. I led the team in scoring. So he sends the guy out of the minors to see if he's tough to fight me. So here I am fighting year 2 in training camp day 1. And I'm not ever trying out for that spot.
So you just happen to be good at it, Wendell.
Yeah, but that was, and so Kevin had to make the team. So he's going to, and so then he come back to fight a second time because he went in to get stitches during camp.
Yeah.
And John Brophy went out of the stands scouting down into the trainer's room and kicked him back on the ice to get in another fight.
Oh, jeez.
So then it turned into a bench clearing brawl because our veterans and Russ Cortland jumped in and said, "This is ridiculous." But that was Brophy. He wanted John Brophy was playing. He used to play in the East Coast. He's an East Coast coach and player. That's the level that he was, and that was real tough hockey in the old days.
Long Island Ducks.
Yeah, and
Island Ducks.
Terry Sexsmith was a tough guy. He was our trainer in Saskatoon, and he remembers him because he got in a fight with him. And John Brophy was in getting stitches. And so he was sitting in the penalty box, and out from across the ice, John Brophy comes skating with the thread and the needle hanging out of his head to come and jump in the penalty box after Terry Sexsmith to get him back. And he was so mad, he didn't even wait to get stitched up.
Yeah.
But that was Bro. He just loved that, and he was so intense. So when he was coaching in Toronto, our team doctors were there every game to take his blood pressure, because he'd be going through the roof.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so our doctors were lined up after the first period to make sure he wasn't going to pass out on the bench.
And he had like the shock of white hair. And when he would get angry, his face was like tomato red. It was like one of the funniest things. They'd always do that one shot back to the bench, and there's Brof just spitting and his face is getting red. I'm like, someone's got to check this guy's blood pressure here. Make sure he's going to be all right. He's the angriest guy on the bench, Wendell.
Yeah, no, it was, and that was our, back in the old days, our Chuck Norris division. I call it Chuck Norris division because the Norris division that's pretty much how it played. Jacques Demers was an East Coast guy. So all these guys battled each other coming up as coaches, whether it be in Mini, their management, Brof in Toronto, Jacques in St. Louis or Detroit. So they hated each other just from their battling days in the East Coast League. Huh. And so it was a real battle. If you played in the Smythe division, it was skill and talent. Calgary, Winnipeg, Edmonton. Flying, they could all skate.
LA.
Adams and Patrick division, they could play a little of both. And the Norris division was Chuck Norris division.
Oh, yeah.
You didn't want to be up 2 or down 2 goals because that means the ugly guys get to play. That's just how the game turned out in our because we weren't as good a division. The teams in general weren't as good,
but the games were so much fun.
They were. That's the one thing I miss about
so much fun
today's hockey and us. Not playing very well right now. So you're at the end of the second period. We're losing 4-1. Right now, it's like I think I'd just rather get out of here early than watch the third period. Well, in the 80s. You didn't want to leave because if the game was 4-1, you knew we were going to lose as a fan, but you knew there was going to be some fun stuff happening in the third period. The other guys get to play, and we always called the other guys, whether it be Kevin McGuire, Dave Semenko was with us, Ty Domi when he started,
Brian
Curran. So there was going to be some fun, different kind of action going on. So the fans never left. And today's game, that's the one thing you don't really see that intensity till playoffs. Then once playoffs hit. Playoffs are always the same. All eras are the same in the playoffs. But regular season now, it's more of a skill and matchup game and not the way it was back in the old days.
Not a question, just a thought. I'm going to give you 2 names. What comes to mind right away? Harold Ballard and King Clancy.
King Clancy was the nicest person I've ever met. He did everything there was in hockey, from reffing to coaching to playing. And the biggest thing with Harold, and I never got to know Harold when he was younger. I knew Harold when he was older. And when King Clancy passed away, that was his last friend. Harold changed when King passed away. Because they would meet King Clancy would drive, and I don't know how he did it. He would drive and park in the back of the gardens, walk to the hot stove, and him and Harold would have breakfast every morning at 8. He'd have to ask you every time walking down the hallway where the door was. But he drove to the rink. So I don't know how King got to the rink, but he drove to the rink but couldn't find the door when he got in. but King was probably the nicest guy I ever met, and he had he wasn't doing anything then, but he had an office up in the offices up there, and he did everything in hockey. And I think when King left, there was no sounding board that could calm Harold down. Like that, because King at least played the game. Harold never played the game or grew up with the game, so he didn't know it. So King was really a sounding board.
And what about Harold himself?
Harold
can be a galvanizing guy for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, he was. My parents loved him because when he'd fly to Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg, and he'd go out there, sit in the stands, he'd take my mom and dad for lunch or dinner all the time. They thought he was the greatest guy. Russ Courtnall's mom, he treated us really well. Even as a team, Harold treated us well. We were never going to win because he knew nothing about hockey. And he wanted to make all the decisions, and that's where Gerry McNamara couldn't make the right decisions. Gord Stellick couldn't make the right. They had a very tough time doing their job because they had to talk Harold into the decision they wanted to do. They couldn't say, Harold, this is what we're doing. They'd have to do a whole circle and make it like he come up with the idea.
Make it sound like, Harold, you came up with this great idea. We were thinking about it all night.
So now the deal's too late. And that Harold was at the end and not thinking straight. But he was think of it, he was the first one that took the top 10 rows or so out of the grays and put box seats in to make more money.
Yeah.
And everybody said he was crazy to put boxes in. He says, what do I take the cheapest seats out and put the most expensive seats in?
Yeah.
And so he did that. He bought the Hamilton Tiger Cat so he could put advertising.
Remember he put the banners on.
He put the Hamilton Tiger Cat banner behind the visiting bench so it was on Hockey Canada every night just to rub it in the Toronto Argos.
Oh, yeah.
That was like he had, like he would, and he was the first one. If you go in the media today, how people on all these new social medias, good press, bad press, Harold thought it was all good.
All good.
Good or bad. Like in July, if it was a bad day in July, he'd think of something to make sure the Leafs are in the press. And he was ahead of his time on some of that stuff because he just keep it out there. And he wasn't, in today's world, he wasn't a rich guy. He basically owned the Leafs and that was it. Mm-hmm. And he really,
you know what? That's a really good point because most people that own sports franchises, they have the business that they have their own business that got them rich so they could buy a hockey team or a baseball team or a football team. But you're right. Harold had the Leafs.
He ended up getting it because of Smythe going.
Yep, Stafford Smythe.
And so then you end up getting the Leafs. And then he had and the Toronto Maple Leafs to this day, win, lose, or draw, the Toronto Maple Leafs are this big and strong. They are the only professional franchise in all of North America have 18 million fans to make 18,000 seats work. Think of New York. They got 5 NHL teams in the area.
Yeah.
Toronto has nobody till you get to Ottawa, Buffalo, Detroit, Montreal. In that that middle there is 18 million people, all for one team. No competition. California's got 3.
Yeah.
And so Dallas Cowboys got Kansas City up the road. Like we have, as the Leafs, you have somebody's always going to go to the game because there's that many people in the area. So it makes the entity that strong. And that's pretty much why it can be that strong. There's that many people want to get into that building.
You know, this city, not just this city, but like all of Ontario and fans all across Canada had their hearts broken when you were traded to Quebec in the Matt Sundin deal. Sherwood Basson told me he was talking to Cliff Fletcher about it, and when your name came up, Cliff said, I will trade Wendel Clarke on one condition. And Sherry said, what's that? He said, I'll trade you Wendel Clarke if you agree to put me in the deal. Because if I trade Wendel Clarke, they're going to run me out of town in Toronto, put me in the deal, I'll go to Quebec with them. What do you remember? I remember in North York at Mel Assman Square, I was part of it at the Fan, had a big sort of send-off for you. What do you remember from the trade that took you from Toronto to Quebec?
Well, you knew once Wayne Gretzky got traded to Los Angeles, anybody can be traded. So you're a free game. We had no cell phones, no way of getting hold of me. I was shooting a Cheerios commercial in Mississauga. So I drove back to the city. I'm at the Esso station. Not that it's a big deal that I remember I was at Front and Bathurst when I got traded. At the Esso station. And I turned the radio station on to see who we drafted.
That's right, because the Hartford draft was on.
The
That's
draft
right.
was on, so I was,
Yes.
well, I wonder who we drafted.
That's right.
So I turned the radio station on, and that's when I heard I got traded to Quebec on the radio station. Right there on that street corner. And then, so then it's like, okay. And when I was going to my first training camp in Quebec, so I was driving to Quebec, I knew I wasn't a Toronto Maple Leaf anymore because I got my first traffic ticket on the other side of Kingston for speeding. When I was a Leaf, they just tell you keep going. As soon as I'm a Nordique, okay, they were speeding, here's your ticket. And so that's how I found out, there was no cell phones. And my answering machine at home, everybody trying to get a hold of you, but I had no idea.
Did you have any idea that it was coming?
No, I had no idea. His first year that there wasn't rumors. Like there was rumors in years before. I remember Corson was involved.
The Montreal trade.
Montreal.
You and Lehman for Corson and someone else.
Somebody else. And there's lots of all the stuff. Yeah. But then this was the first quiet year. The second year going to the semifinals, the highest stats I'd ever got, offensively playing. So it was too quiet. So when you think back about it, whenever it's too quiet, something's going to happen. That's that is. But that was just that's all part. And Cliff did the deal. That was probably the most skilled team I ever played on that were young was in Quebec. Because of the Eric Lindros thing, when he wouldn't go to Quebec, at center ice in Quebec at the time, they had Sakic, Forsberg, Ricci, Sundin, and Deadmarsh were the five centermen. And there's not enough ice time to share. They're all number ones.
Not enough pucks.
So they could give up, and Toronto needed, because Dougie was getting along in the two, so Cliff was thinking, how do I get the next 10-year guy that can center? And that was his true calling, was to get that player for post. He was thinking 5 years after Dougie and I were gone, really, for the next run. And this is one thing I always say, nobody knows this. I've never even told you this.
Oh, go for it. I'm all ears.
Matt Sundin would have had 300 more points had he played wing than center.
Listen, I'm with you about 1,000,000% on this one. If you look at all of Matt Sundin's big goals, and you think of the one against Calgary, on the wing, cuts to the middle, sticks the leg out, and goes bar down. That's a winger's goal.
His two best stat years.
You're so right.
The year I got traded for him, he played wing with Sakic. His first year in Toronto, he played wing with Gilmore. Matt's was the big, strong skater, but not a great skater. Not like fluent, easy. He was a big. So if you'd have put this big, strong guy, like you said, put the leg out, cutting the net, he'd have been that big guy that didn't have to play in his own end, like Marner was for us. Picture Marner, but put 7 inches and 100 pounds on him. That's Matt Sundin.
Matt Sundin, you're right.
You take Marner playing the wing and give him 6 inches and 100 pounds. That's Matt Sundin. That's how good Matt's was. Yeah. And so you put. I always say if he would have played wing, but he always wanted to play center and be the guy, but he wouldn't have had to get tired. Wayne Gretzky never played in his own end. Jari Kurri went back. Wayne took the draws, but Jari went back in his own end. Wayne stayed high and played wing in his own end, so he didn't have to work down low. And so all these little things that would go on.
What was it like playing against Wayne? I remember, and we talked about Marty McSorley a couple of seconds ago. When I worked with Marty at Sportsnet a few times, we'd go out and have a beer, and I'd ask him about Wayne. And one of the things that always impressed me, and this has always stuck with me, he said, one of the things that you will seldom, if ever, see is a picture of Wayne skating in front of the bench. And I said, really? He goes, you'll never see a picture of Wayne skating in front of the bench. I said, why is that? He said, Wayne Gretzky wanted to know where everybody was on the ice at all times. And if he skated along the bench, he couldn't see who was going off and who was coming on. So he always stayed away from the bench because he wanted to know who was leaving, who was coming on. Like he had that kind of awareness of where everybody was on the ice at all times. What was it like playing against that?
That's totally true with Wayne. He's the best player I've seen. And the reason I get at this, I know he maybe played in an era where you got the most points all the time, but he won the scoring race by 50, 60 points all the time.
Yeah.
Nobody in today's era does that. Not McDavid, not Crosby, not anybody. Do they win every year by that many points? And Wayne Gretzky never once played in traffic. Never once in front of the net. Never once flying through the middle. Never once did he put himself in danger. One night in Toronto, cutting through the blue line. Was it McCreary?
It was.
That was the only time.
Right along the blue line. Great hit.
But he could dictate the whole game. You think of it. He could dictate the whole game and never be in any of the high-risk areas where Crosby's in the middle of it.
Yes,
McDavid's flying through it.
Yep.
Like everybody. And Bobby Orr, like how many injuries did he have playing in the middle of it? Wayne could dictate the game. And you didn't think you did anything. You'd see the sheet at the end. He had 6 points. And yet he wasn't anywhere because people said, well, he had Marty and he didn't have to protect him. I said, his decisions were already made 3 strides before you got to him. Like there was no reason he was that good. He could see the game. And I remember one time he'd hit Yari Curry behind him. And I said, how would you know Yari's there? Well, he said, I looked up and I counted 9 guys. He wasn't there, so he had to be here. If I made that blind back pass, it would have been the other direction and scored on Potvin. But he could just sense and feel the game. Not saying he's like Mario individually in our era, I think was a better individual player than Wayne. But put Wayne with a bunch of good players, I don't know anybody. And that 87 Canada Cup, Mario learned so much because he was a second-year player watching Wayne around good players, and he really helped Mario watching him. And Wayne was just that. You put Wayne on an average team, he's pretty good. You put Wayne on a good team, he takes everybody's level to the next, like, because he could really play. And he could do it without playing in traffic. Like he dictated the game and was never in the middle of anything. Dale Howardchuk, another guy, but he had to be in the middle of everything to be good. So that's how good I thought Wayne was. He wasn't ever in it, and yet on the score sheet, he was a part of the whole game every time. And that 93 series, our media guys in Toronto, at the end of Game 5 said, Wayne Gretzky and Luc Robitaille haven't showed up. I think they're finished. That's what our media said. So you don't think Wayne read that? Game 6 and 7, 9 points. Our own media got in their kitchen. But Wayne was like he took. I remember in '87 Canada Cup we were coming out, and that's probably one of the most fun teams I got to try out for and got cut. Because every day you get to training camp in Montreal. Yeah. One day Wayne Gretzky's your centerman. The next day Dale Howardchuk's your centerman. The next day Dennis Savard's your centerman. You're getting to play with all these Hall of Famers. Mm-hmm. And when I got cut, I couldn't be upset because I got cut the same day as Steve Yzerman and Cam Neely.
Yep.
So I said, if they don't look that upset, I guess I really can't be upset. Those guys are Hall of Famers. But Wayne, one inter-squad game, we both used Titan hockey sticks. And one inter-squad game, he said, Clarke, I'm using your stick. He used my stick, scored 3, and said, here it is. There's nothing wrong with your stick. So you're telling me it's not the stick then that my problem is, right? But he was so good. He just, like, we're talking different legs, different lie, different curve. And
just grabbing it, no problem.
He knew he was already making the team, I think.
A pretty good chance.
But he was that, and he was the real team guy with everything. He was always with, and then be gone. Yeah. But he always made sure everybody was together. And I think Mario really learned a lot under Wayne, that Canada Cup.
Well, was that the best hockey you ever saw? I've always maintained that 87 was probably the best year for hockey with a lot of things other than the Canada Cup too, but that Canada Cup 87 was the finest.
That era right there, 87 defined it, but that era was the best year for hockey for fans.
100% true.
Because you had skill guys, tough guys, good defensemen, great goalies, yet the score was 6-5, but Grand Fear wasn't bad.
Hey,
like your
international hockey too. Canada Cup, Rendezvous. Like there was some great international hockey in 87 too.
Just the rules of hockey and how it was played for the fan, I think was some of the most exciting hockey of how they called it then.
You played in some great old arenas, starting with Maple Leaf Gardens, and then off to the Colisée. Both are no longer in use. One's a grocery store, as a matter of fact. But, in Montreal, you played at the Forum. You played at the old Chicago Stadium. You played down the QEW at the old Odd, where the seats weren't laid back. They were straight up and the fans were right on top of you. I guess Chicago was like that too. The old Boston Garden, the Spectrum. Did you have a favorite place outside of Toronto to play?
The favorite place is wherever you were loved or hated. So Montreal, obviously, because that rivalry was still very big because of the original six. And I always, watching hockey growing up, was when you heard the siren in the Montreal Forum as a fan, and that had a certain siren sound. So when I got to hear it for the first time playing in the Montreal Forum,
oh, that's awesome.
That was a neat feeling. And the two buildings, Toronto and Montreal, were the last two buildings with low glass. So the sideboards, if you're standing, I could grab the top of the glass. No mesh. No plexiglass behind the benches, visiting or home.
Heads up.
So you could walk right. There was a couple times Dan Maloney, our coach, or John Brophy, I thought were going up into the stands after some of the fans. and because they were right on top of you. And our fans would be heckling the visiting coaches and fans, because they were right there. Like if you had the end gold seats, the kids would walk by and the players, we'd be stealing the popcorn from the kids right in the middle of the game. They'd be walking by with their popcorn. We'd be stealing the popcorn. And so the old buildings, it smelt and was hockey. Where today, all the buildings are generic. They're meant to concerts, basketball, hockey. If I dropped you in a building today with the lights off, you wouldn't know. If I dropped you in a building, Montreal, the old Chicago State, you knew you were in that building. The old Colisée, one of my best memories in there, has nothing to do with hockey, although we were losing 3 or 4-0 after the first period. John Brophy was coming in, and our goalie couldn't sit with the team because there wasn't enough room on the bench, so he sat across the ice in the walkway beside the penalty box because there was no room. So he was going guy to guy, tearing a strip off all of us. He gets to Ken Reggett. He's got the white jersey on, or the blue jersey, because we wore blue on the road then. And he had a yellow mustard stain right down the front of his white maple leaf in the middle of the game. And he just walked out of the room, no more to say, because Kenny Reggett was over eating hot dogs. And the mustard had went right on the white maple leaf, and that yellow stain was right on the leaf on his sweater. So that was the Colisée there.
Although I got in Ken Reggett's defense, the Chien Show,
the hot dogs
Quebec or Montreal were the finest in the league.
Yeah, no, you're the best food. Hot dogs, Chien Show in Quebec and Montreal. There's always 48 hot dogs sitting there post game, win lose. You couldn't show the coach you're eating them if you lost, but they were always a staple.
Yeah,
in the dressing room. And Chicago Stadium, old stadium, you had to walk down a flight of stairs, and one guy a game slipped, and you end up at the bottom, and the camera's looking up at you. And in the bowels of the old building, you get there for morning skate or the game, you had to empty out your hockey gloves and shin pads because the cockroaches would be crawling in and around all your equipment. And so you'd be emptying all your stuff out. And some of these old, the Buffalo Odd, the old rink wasn't big enough, so the visiting team got dressed in 2 rooms. So during the game, the defense and the forwards never dressed in the same room. Same in St. Louis, the old building, only 2, you never dressed in the same room. Not enough room in the old. And technically, the Maple Leaf Gardens, the visiting dressing room in the Gardens, if you were 6'2" and put your skates on, you couldn't stand straight up. You hit the roof of the dress. So if you were taller than that, you had to bend over. So I can only imagine how hot that room was in the Gardens.
Oh, for sure.
And so all the old buildings had these. And in Detroit, the old Joe Louis Arena, Scotty Bowman coaching. And so he has probably the best coach as a technical coach and coach for everything. He would paint the visiting dressing room start of every playoffs. So you walk in, all you could smell was paint.
So you'd feel faint when you got on the ice.
All
It's
you
like-
smelled was paint, because new paint, you paint a room, it lasts for. He would have that visiting room. Oh no, we got to make it look good.
We're so happy to have the Maple Leafs here. We're so excited, Wendell. We painted the room for you.
And then they would sand the rubber walkways, so you're walking out, dulling your skates.
Dulling your blades, yeah.
So the trainers, if they forgot, they always had to make sure they had to, because it wouldn't be clean. They would make sure it was sanded before you went out to the ice.
Didn't he also shorten the benches so you'd be sitting down doing a squat?
You're
You'd be burning your quads.
Different height benches in the visiting and home. Scotty, he thought of it all. When I played in Detroit, and he had figured out the whole playoffs. If every team went to the Stanley Cup final, he figured out that Detroit had one less day off. And he would use that to the NHL. Like, they already started complaining. So when you guys are watching the playoffs, you always see the managers and the coaches lobbying post-game about what's going on, because they're just arguing to set something up to try to get a call later. So Scotty had figured all these things out, because there was nobody better at hockey. And if you were to talk to Scotty today, he still watches it that intently about everything. He was the best tactician, I think, at hockey.
You know the curfew hockey stick story with Scotty?
Yeah.
So what Scotty Bowman used to do is curfew is 11 o'clock, boys. Make sure you're in your rooms. And he would leave a hockey stick at the front.
At the bellhop at the front door.
With the bellhop at the front. And sure enough, the guys would be coming in midnight, 12:30, 1 o'clock. What the bellhop would say is, oh, don't worry, I won't say anything, but can you sign this stick for me? Oh, yeah, sure. Oh, can you sign this stick? Can you sign this stick? And next morning at breakfast, who here broke curfew? No hands go up. Then he pulls out the hockey stick and he says, all these signatures were from after 11 o'clock last night. Now, who broke curfew? A couple of hands started to go up.
Moral of the story, never sign your own name if you're doing something wrong.
Exactly.
Right? So if I come in after curfew, Bobby Hull, number 9, right? Never write my own name down. But yeah, awesome. Scotty, all the little tricks. You'd see coaches hiding behind plants in the lobby. So, like, if you're going to be late for curfew, and Lyle Oldline always told me, because I don't know if he ever made a curfew.
That's true.
Old guy from back home from where he grew up. He said, if you're going to miss curfew, miss it. Come in at 5. Oh, yeah. Don't come in like an hour later, because everybody's still kind of coming in. Make sure it's late.
If you're going to miss heaven, don't miss it by 2 inches.
Yeah, that's it.
Really miss. And really go for it.
And Lyle Oldline, another thing, he'd play in Toronto because he had never, ever made curfew. And so at the start of the game, his team partners, and Dave Ellett verified this when he played in Jersey, he'd go, Dave, it's not going to be a good night. You're on your own. What do you mean I'm on my own? Well, I'm going to get in a fight. I'm going to tell the ref off, and then I'm going to get kicked out because there's no way I can finish the game today. So he already planned it that he wasn't going to feel any good, so he would get in a fight and then get kicked out on purpose. And then the coaches wouldn't know that because of what the other reason was.
I want to open up the floor for questions. I'm sure people have questions or comments or memories for Wendel. And as we get set for that, one thing that I do want to ask you, and I think it was against, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was against Dallas. Tell us about coming back to the Toronto Maple Leafs, that first game back.
Was it Dallas or Minnesota yet, or is it Dallas already? They just moved?
I think it might have been Dallas.
Yeah, no, that was very exciting. First game back in Toronto was like a playoff game. And our guy, Dougie Gilmore, sent a puck across, and I was able to put the game winner in. So that was probably, I remember that game more than any other game before that. Not more than my first game, everything. That was
remember the ovation?
Back playing in Toronto. That was a huge night.
That was a great one.
Jeff Marek along with you. Hope you enjoyed the program today. If you did, or maybe even if you didn't, they can't all be gems, folks. Please hit the subscribe button. Also a reminder, every morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, Johnny Lazarus, Colby Cohen, I call them the Impact Players. You might know them as a tandem that makes up the Morning Cup of Hockey. Also DFO Live at noon Eastern. This year, your host Tyler Yaremchuk alongside Carter Hutton. Full day's worth of programming right here on Daily Face-Off, your favorite YouTube hockey channel. And as a reminder as well, Zach Phillips, our producer here for the sheet, said if you subscribe, he'll buy you a puppy. It's true. It's true.